welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. I have some bickies and some coffee, and I hope you have some coffee with you too. Enjoying this podcast. Just regular butter on the cookies, nothing fancy. And we are exploring the implications of the dialectic that we've been learning on understanding not just our own spiritual quest, but our everyday worlds. We started with the question of how can we use it to understand a debate meme that's popular right now. Would a woman rather be trapped or be out alone in a forest and run into a man or a bear? So that's our long-term goal. But in getting there, we have been reflecting on the two kinds of relationships that have come to the surface in the dialectic and in the Phaedo, which we've been reading, specifically a left and right opposite kind of relationship on a commensurate level. And the world of becoming is playing back and forth of those two forces, growing and decaying. Everything is in change in our physical world, but also a lesser, greater relationship of different levels, incommensurate levels. And we've been seeing how the idea of vice isn't a movement of not having the virtues and learning them. That's normal. It's an allegiance to the shadow of the virtues. It's a lesser and greater. Equally so, we've been applying this to knowledge, because we are wondering, how do we get knowledge? As part of the philosophical process, of course, because Socrates has been saying in the Phaedo on his last day that the goal of the philosopher is knowledge. That's truth, which is in the realm of being. All of the ideas that we're interested in, like beauty and justice, are all aspects of that realm of being. They have self-ousia. Excuse me. But of course, we need to bring the virtues with us so that experience of truth can upgrade us as individuals to the upgraded version of the virtues, which happens through phronesis, the currency through which and for which we trade our virtues in for, is the metaphor Socrates has been using. So we want knowledge, but also after giving the doctrine of philosophy being the art and practice of death and dying, Socrates' friends were like, that sounds good, but I don't know if the soul is actually immortal, which is essential for philosophy to be philosophy. Can you convince me? Okay, he didn't say convince me. That has that tone of those people who are not interested in changing their mind. The lesser version of a philosopher, but someone in good faith. He says, I trust you guys, I just can't see it yet. I don't quite remember it, but I feel like I'm getting close. He can recognize something. And we as philosophers, we're probably brought in because there's something about philosophy, either the experience that's been talking about or the reasoning that seems familiar, seems like it's in the right direction, seems like we're almost remembering something, like we're kind of waking up from a dream. The way that they talk about the brilliant light of being experience of nous, or just the use of reasoning itself. So we can really identify with our Simius character who's saying, hey, I don't quite remember, but I am in good faith. Can you explain something? Show the reasoning, give me the logos, give me a dialectic, in fact, of why the soul has to be immortal. And one of those is the idea of knowing as remembering. That's the one he's stuck on, in fact. So we're really curious about what is knowledge. Yes. Very good from the chat. The doctrine of the philosopher is the practice of death and dying, and it's to collect yourself out of the body and dwell there. Yes. And we've been recognizing that the process for doing that seems to be really fundamentally tied to this dialectic that we've been learning. So we're interested in knowledge. So we asked the question, okay, Socrates starts by talking about in the physical world, isn't it strange how pleasure and pain in our physical world are tied? They never come at the same time, but one follows the other and vice versa. And then he said, if Aesop made a fable about this, he would say that God wanted to unify them together by making them have the same head. So we're curious about that. What is this same head that is higher up metaphysically, where pleasure and pain are not separated in this back and forth movement, which might be a mythological hint in the story to something beyond pleasure and pain? And if pleasure and pain is in the physical world, then maybe that which is unified is the world of being. It's a puzzle. So we're really curious of knowledge. Excuse me. Knowledge. What is knowledge? And these two kinds of relationships, the back and forth of opposites, like left to right or hot and cold, or is it one of those lesser, greater sorts of things? Like the vices. The vices isn't a lack of virtue, it's having the shadow of virtue, being really good at doing bad things instead of being really good at doing good things. And we've been seeing that, the logos, the dialectic, and nous, directed towards being, seems to be what's missing in the vices. Get confused on left and right. Oh, well. In real life, you confuse your left and right hand. Well, so we applied both to knowledge. Well, if knowledge is a kind of waking up, then we are going through this learning process of forgetting to remembering. That's what Socrates is saying learning is, and philosophy is. We're philosophers because we love learning, philomethesis, which turns us into loving wisdom. That's a leveling up. What we're actually interested in learning is something called wisdom, and then that even levels up again to phronesis. So we're actually a lover of phronesis, philophronesis. Of course, it has its shadow, lover of riches, philoknimatos, lover of honors, philotimos, and there is ultimately someone who's a lover of the body, philosomatos, lover of soggy tomatoes, lover of the body, which is, of course, if you are disconnected from being, because the body is in the realm of becoming, but we direct our logos to the realm of being, which is greater. So if there is a two-bodied monster of pleasure and pain, it has one head in the realm of being, maybe. That's what we're after. You've heard of a two-headed monster, but have you heard of a two-bodied monster? That was a hilarious joke. It wasn't really a joke. It was just something dumb that I said. Okay, so we're going from forgetting to remembering. So this would be a left to right, like growing and decaying, being asleep, being awake. Being asleep is just like forgetting, says Socrates. But what's the equivalent to knowledge that is equivalent to vice? If there is a vice version of temperance and courage and wisdom, what's the vice version of knowledge? What's the shadow of an outline of a shadow? And we looked at that last time and saw that it was actually something called pathologos. It is something that has not truth. So we have the greater on the left and the lesser on the right. If knowledge has truth, then the lesser, the shadow, the reflection, the distorted reflection into a lower dimension is appearance instead of truth. If knowledge gives us the paradigm, we follow an NPC script that leads us towards not our destiny, but our fate. People ask questions if they have knowledge or they seek knowledge, but people who want to keep a blind allegiance to the appearance of knowledge. Oh, welcome to the chat, first time chatter. Hive mind relates to a two-handed entity, intriguing about take on symbolism. Right, yes. Yeah, if pleasure and pain are two bodies, interesting as well, because Socrates is saying in the physical world, there's the world of becoming is becoming from something to something, including pleasure to pain. It's interesting that he didn't say two-headed monster. He's making the head singular. No, please. I enjoy people in the chat sharing. So, if the greater is knowledge, what's its lesser? Asking questions or making declarations. People who have a pathologos and are tied to that don't seem to want to ask questions. In fact, they might be very scared of questions or get angry at questions to shut down questions. They like giving advice though. Right? I encourage you to take that question with you. You're doing something that's meaningful to you and someone sidles over to you and says, can I give you some advice? Run. I always say no, please. No, thank you. And 9 out of 10 times they insist and they give it anyway. And I just say, I'm not interested in this. Right. Make declarations. But we ask questions. So if knowledge is nous, what's the opposite of knowing something by directly experience and uniting with it in contemplation with the eye of the soul? That's called ousia. That can turn around and experience itself, mind experiencing pure mind. But the act of knowing is also mind, so mind minding mind, all three as one, that's nous. And you can't be mistaken. So people who have that experience say, right, so what's the opposite of that? Direct experience? Certainty. The Dunning-Kruger effect. People who act certain. They don't change their mind. In fact, giving the appearance that you know everything. Oh, yeah, I know everything. But I'm not interested in learning. I'm not interested in that certainty. In fact, this is Socrates at the end of his life. Let's go to the beginning of his philosophical life and see what Parmenides, who taught the dialectic to Socrates when he was 19, he said some interesting things. He said, Socrates, collect thyself together by exercising more in that way that appears useless to the multitude, the dialectic, and is called by them empty talk. For if thou dost not while thou art still young, the truth will utterly elude you. But he said there's a problem with that. There is a great puzzle. In fact, he says this is the greatest of all puzzles. So our ears prick up. This is Parmenides, the teacher of Socrates, saying this is the great puzzle. Look, this one here. The following is the greatest puzzle, even if following the proof through the dialectic, through many elaborate details, dialectic, from one practiced and experienced with the dialectic, and with natural talent in the dialectic, even then, he who contends that the idea selves are unknowable may still remain unpersuaded. So this is the significance of learning the dialectic and applying it not just to the dialectic on the idea selves that he's encouraging Socrates to do. In fact, it's another quote. Here we go. This is what you have to do. Permit the ideas of the real beings to be. Keep your mind fixed on those objections we just talked about. Define each particular idea. That's where to turn your dianoia, your understanding. Allow each idea of each one of the real beings to always be of the self. This is the power of the dialectic. So we see even back then. Oh yes, chat. Take these questions into the marketplace, in the flea market, and ask people about them. See how you go. Even at the early stage of Socrates' learning, Parmenides was pointing out, hey, you're going to have these counterattacks, these objections. In fact, it's the greatest puzzle. So not only is the puzzle to know truth and being and the nature of the oneself through the dialectic a puzzle, there is an even greater puzzle than that. The Pathologos has... Yes, you got it. Dianoia is the Greek word for understanding. Now, this is important because as we go, we're kind of learning a new language, like learning to play football. You're going to have to learn what a tackle is. You're going to have to learn what offside is, and you have to introduce those words so you can talk about it. Like, hey, don't go offside. What does that mean? Well, okay, let's define offside. So you have it so we can use it. Now, a few sessions ago, and by the way, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm posting all of these videos as we go. I'm a little bit behind, but yeah, if you want to catch up on what we went through. But basically, our question we're on right now is it opposites or is it lesser, greater, equal? So those are the two relationships we're on, and we applying it to knowledge, forgetting to remembering. If that's the learning process, is this a opposite? Or is it a lesser to greater? And then ignorance, the unknown destructive loyalty to what we believe is truth, based on an image or a shadow, in Socrates' words, of being, justice, beauty, in all of those ideas, all of those selfers in the realm of being that we call ousia. That causes the worst injustice. That ignorance. Okay? Is that ignorance to remembering, is that an opposite or is that greater to lesser? That's our question. And now we had to recognize, okay, let's define these ideas. Knowledge, from what we've been reading in the Phaedo, link below if you want a copy, is a remembering. That's the whole premise. That's the actual argument we're on in the text. But it's also self-ousia, and the eye of the soul that can turn around and see itself is it ousia as well. It's being, pure being, the higher realm and cause of the realm of becoming. But it's also truth. And Socrates has been saying, hey, that's what philosophers are interested in, truth. And also this mysterious thing called phronesis, which we don't quite know what is yet. And all the selves, justice itself, beauty itself, not a particular thing itself. So that does not sound like what we use when we say the word knowledge. Knowledge might be the closest English translation, but it does not necessarily mean not remembering. It does not mean self-ousia. It does not mean being. It does not mean truth necessarily. It doesn't relate to all of the selves. So we take all of those ideas and we unify them together and give them the Greek word that does mean that, nous. Equally so, understanding. Is understanding just thinking? Is it just logic, like we learn at school? Or is there some specific pattern and model for learning that we share in from the realm of being called the logos? That is the understandable and knowable pattern. So not only can we learn it, and we've been learning it in our quest as philosophers on this channel, but also we keep an open mind about it and questions about it, because understanding is if you don't know it yet, it's a hypothesis, and you can make a good hypothesis by applying the dialectic to it, the structure that we've been learning. It's a way of unifying our understanding, but also it's an if, so it's still a question, and it helps us refine our question, polishing up our question like we're polishing up a gemstone or sharpening a weapon, making it nice and shiny and sharp and good. Because, as we say in the text here, earlier in the text, we've got a quote. Socrates pointed out that it is this is from the Phaedo that we're reading. Self-justice and self-beauty and self-good, the ousia of all of the selves in being, is contemplated not through the body, but whosoever prepares themselves by most accurately dianoia, understanding, each self-investigated will approach the closest to the nous of each being. That's our method. Using a question, yes. So the question makes us focused, makes us curious. It's like a koan. You might have heard of koans, questions that are supposed to keep the spiritual initiate open, because it's like a trick question. Why? Because if we stay focused on the question for long enough, that sustained concentration becomes meditation. And sustained meditation, focusing on that question to the exclusion of all else, because you've been purified to whatever level from your body, from the pushes and pulls of desires and fears and pains and needing to eat cookies. If you can collect yourself out of the body, as Socrates said is the goal, even better, is to go from meditation to contemplation, which is what Socrates called it. Contemplation is where you unite with your question, the object of your question. So you better make sure that your dialectic is focused on one of those ideas in being. The word idea does not mean idea. It's not a concept. It's a Greek word that means of the aspect of. So that's why we can say, oh, being is one of the aspects of nous. Truth is. Beauty is. It's all there. You can make these distinctions within that singular experience of pure being. So, do we call understanding that which shares in the logos and seeks to have questions about the logos? Is understanding that which specifically masters and uses the dialectic and everything? Is understanding something where we try and separate ourselves from the body as best as we can to participate in? Is it something that is applied to nous? No. So we use the Greek word, which does mean all those things, which is dianoia. So we use dianoia and nous for the upgraded, or the anagogic, you could say. Anagogic is to take a metaphor from the lesser to the greater. That's anagogic movement. So we use understanding and knowledge as a kind of lesser metaphor, add these essential terms, and that upgrades it. We have an upgrade noise. To dianoia and nous. And these are the two biggies. In fact, a couple of streams ago, we went back to our question that we've been following all the way through. What is philosophy and how do we do it? Well, we have been learning the dialectic and we recognize those two questions. What is the thing is definition and demonstration. What is the thing and how does it function? Definition and demonstration are the first two categories of the dialectic, which has 4 categories, by the way. Interesting. And then we say, okay, so what is philosophy? Well, we're seeing that a good way of defining it is definition of philosophy, understanding and knowledge, or the ideal or honorific version. The word altos is self, and it has a meaning of honorific, the excellence of something. So we can say that the honorific or the self, that's why we say self-beauty. Often in the past translations, it's translated as beauty itself. Right, in fact, the word self has 3 levels. It has a particular, it has the honorific, and it has the ultimate. That's the first hypothesis. We've got a series on YouTube on the first hypothesis. You can check out if you want. And we're going to go back to the Parmenides after the Phaedo. So, the honorific. What's the honorific or the ideal? Dianoia and nous. Oh, by the way, when you seek to understand the ideals, beings, could you say you are defining them? When you prepare yourself in this understanding through the dialectic, that opens you up to have the direct experience. Could you say you are experiencing the demonstration of what you are defining, confirming in your direct, immediate, intuitive, spirit, mystical experience of the realm of being, that which you have been understanding? Oh, interesting. So our question was, we didn't realize it at the time, but we were actually kind of doing the dialectic. So what we're learning in nailing down the dialectic are the game rules to life that we're following whether we like it or not. So we are becoming rational in the game of philosophy simply from the fact that we are learning the rules of the game that we're playing. If you went into a video game and you were like just started, I don't know, you're playing Mario and you just started like talking to the little turtles and you weren't crushing turts like you're supposed to, then you are being irrational. You got to learn the rules of the game and what you're supposed to be doing. In fact, you're following them anyway. So, we were actually doing it the whole time. Let's keep going. Okay, so what is philosophy? Well, it's essentially dianoia and nous. Oh, definition, demonstration. One leading to the other. Okay, if understanding leads to knowledge, how do we do this understanding thing? So again, to be a philosopher, we ask the question, how do we do it most ideally? And the Greek word is self. In the Odyssey, Homer's Iliad, the story of Achilles, all the way through they use self in the honorific. Achilles had the self shield, the best shield there was. He had the self horse. He had the excellence of horseness. He got into a self state on the battlefield. We might call it being in the zone kind of thing, the excellence. Okay? So how do we do understanding? Well, we're learning the self logos. We're learning the logos, but we recognize, hang on a second, if it's the ideal, we could also call it the self logos. In chat, you have dogness because you have the excellence of the dog. Your dog is the best dog. Your puppy has self-dogness. We're learning the self-logos. It's ours. It's from ourself. It's our own logos. It's the logos. And of course, there's many implications of that you could explore. So you could do a dialectic on the logos. What follows? Oh, it's universal. It helps us. Everyone can share in it. We don't have to fight each other anymore. We don't have to spread lies that, oh, that race is irrational, so we can only kill them. We can't share in the self-logos, which is universal. It solves problems and reaches our destiny. Two things it does: removes our problems or escapes our fate. And also the dialectic applied to the self reaches our destiny, our highest excellence. So these would be the implications that follow if the self-logos actually exists. No more war, no more fighting, no more irrational bullshit propaganda that says, oh no, you can't reason with that group. They're just a insert term that takes self-logos away. Oh, noise. Sounds like a good noise. Oh, thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. So, let's not get off topic. Let's not do a dialectic on the implications of the logos, although I encourage you to do one yourself and share it. Send an email or something and share it with anybody else in the community, or share it in the chat if you've made one, because that's part of being a philosopher.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Sharing your understanding, sharing your questions, sharing your insights is part of the game. So, what is understanding, this dianoia that's so important to philosophy? Well, learning the self-logos, which is, oh, by the way, so let's keep our pattern going. If we recognize definition and demonstration, and our premise is the dialectic is the underlying structure of everything, it should keep going. Let's test it. And then we did. We wrote down this, what's the opposite, or what's the functioning of that which you're defining? Dialectic. Oh, and that's true. How do we develop our dianoia? I dreamt of being not human. It's a dog dreaming about me. Okay. Right, and we can apply this to understanding our dreams, by the way, too, which is a fun thing we can get into later. Well, we realized, hang on a second, even in understanding the definition of philosophy, which was the definition part of our question, what is philosophy? How do we do it? We have definition and demonstration, but we also know that this dialectic has 4 parts. So for the next level, let's try and do all 4. What are the 4 parts of the dialectic? Definition, demonstration, or how does that function? And that thing that can now function, how does it function to many other things? Division. And then of those many things, what's the most significant thing that happens as a result? Or the most unifying of all of those things? That's synthesis, that you can then analyze, which means to take back to the start to understand that first thing in a new way. That's learning. It's a progression through these stages that takes you back with something that allows you to return back home with a new kind of understanding that illuminates it in a new way that was there the whole time, but you didn't see until you went through this process. That's the significance. And we realized that, oh, hang on a second, that's the hero's journey. Every video game, every movie that has a character like that, as a heroic character, goes through that, and that's been unified as something called the hero's journey. So we say, what is philosophy? Well, it's the honorific version or the self version of the hero's journey. So that's a little recap of what we did before. Oh, and by the way, in making this model, we defined the pattern. We demonstrated it in that chart we just did there. And then for the division stage, we pushed the implications. And then we brought it all together and to conclude. And I don't know what these are there for. I can't remember. So that's a little recap of the dialectic and what philosophy, our hypothesis that we're developing about what philosophy is and what dianoia is and what the dialectic is and the significance of it. So now we are asking the question, yes, we say DDSA, even though it's DDDSA, because DD is much funner to say. Or you say SO, which implies the S to S, S to O, O to O to S version of those, which is cool. Like those 4, isn't that awesome? Those 4 terms perfectly encapsulate everything that you want to do in understanding something, but also can be abbreviated in 2 terms with SOs. Okay, so we're doing that now. We're doing a dialectic on what we have discovered about knowledge and relationships. So our 2 terms are knowledge and relationships. So maybe S is knowledge, the O is relationships. And we have recognized there are 2 kinds of relationships. Primarily, opposites, like from forgetting to remembering, or lesser to greater. Our pathologos is the lesser version of knowledge. That's our ignorance. One is stagnant and one allows for development. So our question is, and the topic for today and last time, can we use what we're seeing in the dialectic to better understand our everyday world as well as our soul's quest, just for fun? Because, hey, it might be worth living in a harmonious world. It might help us do philosophy more. And it might be good to, end all this unnecessary torture and suffering and murder and genocides that are happening right now. Maybe it's worth doing. Maybe. What do you think? Yeah. So, our question are right-wingers or conservative or fascist or dictatorship groups? Relationship 1, left to right, which means that they would be aware that they don't know and they're here to learn and remember. They're aware that they're asleep. Asleep as the metaphor to understand forgetting to remembering in terms of learning knowledge. You wouldn't be here if you already knew everything. It would be no reason. So we're here to do it. It's our purpose. It's our goal. It's our job. Are these conservatives and right-wingers and fascists moving to knowledge, aware that they don't know, through the logos, the asleep to awake movement that happens in the physical world, which is why we're here? Or are they the second kind of relationship, relationship 2, which is asleep to dead? Not asleep to awake on the same commensurate level, but asleep is to awake as dead is to alive, incommensurate levels. Which means they would be stagnated, stuck to a loyalty to an inherited false belief and shadow of knowledge. Right. Meaning they're not changing, they're stuck. And Socrates says, by the way, that's the cause of injustice and vice. You can do the most harm here. And also, it's characterized by stagnation. To be conservative, by definition, is I want it to be the way it was. So all George Bush, Reagan, George Bush Sr., Trump, they all say the same thing. Make America Great was a catchphrase used by all of them. All of them. And Hitler. He didn't say America, he said Germany. Why? Because they're appealing to this part of our human nature, our pathologos. We all have it. We're here to learn to purify ourselves from that and also perfect ourselves through the dialectic. Dialectic applies to both. Our ladder up, which is the greater, the logos, and dissolving the shadow of, this is the shadow of the ladder. That's our job. So, if conservatives by definition means I am going to conserve the way it was and I'm not interested in learning, which is why that's the party that burns the books, that kills the philosophers, that's anti-intellectual, that doesn't like asking questions, that likes to yell and scream and lie on television. Which of the two is it? Are they aware that they don't know and they're doing their best to go from asleep to awake through the logos and dialectic? No. Therefore, it's not the conservative party, it's the pathologos party, by definition. And okay, so what happens when you point that out? People will turn around and say, well, what about the left? Whataboutism is a way of distracting, going on a tangent. Hey, don't look at what we're doing. Look at what they're doing. Okay, it's a trick. It's the opposite of reasoned reflection. It's a bullshit trick. But we could address that question too. Now that we've seen what they are, what about the other side? The left or the progressive. Are they adequately solving the problem of the pathologos personified in our real world by the right-wingers or the fascists? No. They lack what they need to address this problem. So they always say, oh no, we have to cooperate. We have to relent to the fascists. Good people on both sides and all that. Second, well, okay, so they can't. What are our two things here? Question one is a question, why do we have our problems? Which is, how do we escape fate? Question two, make a different color. Let's go this color. Our question, human question one. Human questions one, escape fate. Fate. Or solve problems. And number two, reach destiny. Or know thyself is the expression that's used in the Greek to refer to this task, okay? So, how well is the left solving this problem? They can't. They haven't. We will continue to suffer the implications, what follows, the dialectic in real time, you could say, the implications of the pathologos party. The pathologos made honorific in the shadow of honorific by making it a whole way of being. and saying, oh, by the way, the pathologos is virtue. Calling vice virtue is the nature of the right wing. Hey, do you like being racist? That's the best you can be. Look at our president be racist. Not personal. Everyone has it. And if you're a Trump sort of a person who was raised in luxury and nobody ever said anything, every single golf tournament you've been in, you've cheated, and everyone knew you cheated, but they still let you win, then why would he have any reason to turn around and reflect on himself? So you could say even for Trump, you could trace the causes for his pathologos and why he is the way he is. It's not vilifying people, it's understanding, because we are all philosophers. We are all in this game. We all have problems and we all have work to do. Let's all wake up together. Why not? What do you say, Owen?
Wow.
And accept that quest. That's the accepting the quest noise, and level up together.
Wow. Wow.
Okay? So, criticism of the left, they can't solve this. By the way, they are called the Progressive Party. So, conservative versus progressive. Do they actually progress? We saw that conservative is stuck. What's progression? Reflecting upon your... So here we go. It's a kind of ousia that's not stagnant, that uses the self-logos, applied to the self-ideals so we can figure out the paradigm for justice and beauty and excellence, that also illuminates something about the nature of ourself, that comes back around so we understand ourselves better. And we use that understanding to do the same thing again. And we understand ourselves better. And then we understand ourselves better. And then we understand ourselves better. And we go on. This is the process we have to do, according to Socrates, habitually, through practice and discipline. I don't think he uses the word discipline. I think he says practice through habit. Discipline has the connotations of you're forcing yourself. It's not. It's fun. It's the best game in town. It's freaking awesome.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
So, if they're progressive, that literally the definition of progressiveness is this. So, we have a paradigm. By understanding the dialectic, we have a paradigm through which we can understand what the heck is going on in our crazy world. How many more years of repeating cycles of self-confirming ignorance and racism and genocide and murder do we need? 1 more year? No more years. 0 more years. 0.00 more years is needed. Why? Because we have this book. We literally have what we need to understand the paradigm, which is nothing other than the self-logos in the dialectic, which is used for our own development, but also to understand the development of the human species. Because we are alive, we exist, therefore we follow the logos, and so does our spiritual and personal and species development. Simple. So simple. You can't really debate it. It's not a debate of opinions, it's just the truth about the dialectic. But also, we can say, how well are we solving this problem? Not well. And if they're progressive, are they using the self-logos applied to the self in terms of being in truth to better understand the nature of the self, and then repeat that progression to the true model of the progression that is called the dialectic, which allows an actual movement through a hierarchy. Are they doing that? No. Both teams are ignorant. Different sorts of ignorance, and both have a mixture. How many people within the progressive parties are actually doing the exact same thing as the conservatives? How many people, they might not say it out loud, they might not market themselves that way, and how many progressives are in the progressive party are humans? All of them. Therefore, they all have a mixture of both. A certain level of development through the logos, and a certain level of power of their pathologos. It's being human. All of us. It's not about picking a team, it's applying to both teams the standard. It's like, hey, what construction company do you want? The one that makes a house that will fall down and kill your dog, or the one that makes a house that will fall down and kill your entire family? Neither. We always say, it always seems to be a lesser of two evils questions. Well, I'd rather kill my dog than my whole family. That's not the question. It's a bullshit. It's a lie question. What's the question? What is the standard that we should apply to everyone? Doesn't matter what team you're in. That's pathologos language. My clan versus your clan. That's a remnant of a period of our historical development, our evolutionary development. That's from the caveman ages. Again, it's a solution that served a purpose at a time that no longer does. That's all. It's not a blame game. We happen to be at the level of development where, as Socrates is pointing out, we can solve our problems. Yeah, they killed Socrates, but it's the internet age now. We don't have to, it's not, why kill anybody about it? We're free from being literally stuck in a cave because we can travel. We've got airplanes. We've got internet. Our ideas can travel. There's less of a force to bind us to our ignorance. So, what's the model? The dialectic. Both people. Every individual within both. Everyone is a human and everyone has these problems. So, using that information, let's make a little dialectic. So from a conclusion, politics is wrong to use the image of left and right because these imply they are commensurate opposites. That's playing into the physical world principles. Hey, we're just moving from one to another. I happen to think the best one is the left, and you happen to think the best one is the right. Who knows, really? It's a back and forth, and time will work it out. It's called a Hegelian dialectic. Sometimes people think the wrong thing, and sometimes people think the right thing, but they just go back and forth, right? That's the two-bodied person, pleasure and pain. Oh, you just go back and forth in the physical world. Socrates saying, no, there's a head that's not in the physical world. That is the true principle. That's not a back and forth. It's a greater and lesser. You either have the logos or you have the pathologos. They're not opposites. They're greater and lesser. It's the second kind of relationship. Therefore, what? Therefore, number one, it's wrong to use the images of left and right. That's the con. Like asleep to awake or forgetting to remembering. Actual true knowledge through dialectic and nous, because no party does this. Also, it's actually lesser versus greater in relationships. So that's the true nature of the relationship. Of the two, it's this one. Which is in nature, that's the relationship. And what's the nature? Pathologos versus self-logos or dialectic. Therefore, the political parties should be called the pathologos party and the self-logos dialectic party. Instead of left or right, or which is the actual nature of conservatism and progression. Right? Of course, those loyal to the pathologos will try and muddy the waters. Oh no, I mean conservative family values. Oh, so what you think is right about how to live as a family? Where did you learn them? Was it through the logos and dialectic? No, I just know it. Oh, so yeah, so it is that. Of course, if you actually name it correctly, we'll realize that it shouldn't be a question of do you want the building company that kills your dog, or do you want the building company that kills your family? It should be all building companies should follow the actual paradigm of what actually benefits. So this is what would follow, others to others, what would happen as the result of this. So we're doing a dialectic in real time. Therefore, we no longer pick sides and play the us versus them game inherent to the pathologos. So notice even the progressive party still thinks it should be a two-party system, so they're using the image of actual progression to maintain the pathologos problem, which is us versus them, which again is not personal. It's part of evolving as a human species. Whether you like it or not, there was an asteroid, there was the destruction of the dinosaurs, there was a need to, there was therefore the conditions to evolve intellectually at a faster rate, but there was also a need to survive in caves from saber-toothed tigers despite having an understanding of a high enough level to do so as we can today, because we were evolving. Therefore, this us versus them, my cave good, outside cave bad, was a lie. That was kind of a necessary lie to maintain humans to exist for our evolution. So it's not personal. Let's put that in. Which is not personal. Which is not personal criticism, criticism, attack, or blame game. It is simply what followed from the conditions and causes of our human evolution. And instead, apply the paradigm of truth and true virtue, which is one of our questions we have with us. What the heck is that? Evolution of logos, yes. Yes. So in the chat, evolution is therefore a logos following this pattern. Therefore, there might be a higher being directing that process and maintaining it. That would follow. So a question a philosopher might have is, this higher being that is creating at each moment and maintaining this system, this logos pattern of evolution throughout all time, and also has some sort of communication with us through the logo sharing in it right now, what is that? And if it's intelligence and I have the same nature of intelligence, can I experience it directly? Can I unify with it? And what kind of scope would it have, seeing the whole of time and the whole of human history at once? It can't be a three-dimensional intelligence. It must have there's a YouTube video which is really cool called Flatland by who's that guy? He had all these documentaries. Carl Sagan talked about what a next dimensional entity would look like. He'd be able to, we're all like flat two-dimensional objects, or we can't see from a high dimension, but you have an apple up the top that can see everything. So likewise, from the chat, there might be a question: what is this higher intelligence? What's its vision? What kind of vision must it necessarily have if it is functioning throughout all time? And could that be something that we're after in this experience of knowledge ourselves? Seeing as knowledge is out of the realm of time. Maybe. Don't know. Good question. Polish it up nicely, put it in your inventory, put it in your sack, carry it with you, because
You're a wizard, Harry.
you're a wizard, Harry. True virtue. So, apply the paradigm of truth and true virtue, which is linked to phronesis. So let's just sneak our... Yes, you're right. So let's sneak our... So in the video, it has a ball moving through the levels and how it would appear, how the three-dimensional object would appear to a two-dimensional flatlander, which is interesting because one of the things we're using to change our mind in the dialectic is recognizing a certain beauty in the reasoning, and one of the aspects of beauty is symmetry. And if you saw a ball moving through a two-dimensional plane as a two-dimensional entity, there's a question of whether there's symmetry in there. That's an interesting question. Whoa.
Wow. 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 Wow.
Also, one of the things is by sharing in the logos and accepting this call to action using the hero's journey language, the call to adventure, people in the chat have talked about recognizing certain coincidences or serendipities, and in our reading we have come to certain conclusions, and then we've read the next line and Socrates happens to say the same word, which sounds as bizarre if you just had a physical world perspective. But if you recognize, oh, how does this symmetrical object function in a strange way to us, that recognition of coincidences could be a kind of symmetry through time? Question mark. So a way of seeing a kind of symmetry of this guiding intelligence through the logos in time as part of our human development. Coincidences, serendipities, those sort of things. All right. Some questions I'm throwing out there just for fun. Take them or leave them. Make them your own is what I mean. If something of it sticks out to you. Let's go back. So, we should no longer pick sides and play the us versus them game inherent to the pathologos, which is not a personal criticism, attack or blame game. It's simply what followed from the conditions and causes of our human evolution. Right? Why do I say that? Because within that game, blame game of us versus them, they don't have the logos. Therefore, the only use language serves is to provide the image of knowledge without the logos. But that doesn't make sense. How can you provide the image of knowledge without the logos? Specifically, the logos leads to knowledge. And if you know something, you should be able to give the logos of it, as we read in the text. Winning, abusing people, I'm better because shut up, or debating, debate bros. That's the anti-logos. What is it? Shutting down the logos. We talked about pathologos and anti-logos all the way through. Pathologos is specific to the false belief that's causal, but anti-logos is how it functions. Haters. I've had one, thankfully only one so far. troll in the chat before, and he was not able to provide any logos. You were wrong about this. I was like, oh, cool. I like being wrong, and it's a fun way to get in the door of a dialectic. It helps me learn and evolve. Either the first question of removing my ignorance, or the second question of progressing through the ousia upward. Let's do it. But he couldn't give any logos. He couldn't say why I was wrong or what part was wrong. He couldn't point to a logos in the text even. Instead, he started making personal insults, apropos of nothing. Why? Because without the logos, what's left? The anti-logos. That's how you win. All of the right-wing grifters, what do? Anti-logos. They shout, or they abuse, or they hurl insults, or they use whataboutism. You don't like this genocide, but what about this team? You don't like stopping the. You don't like the genocide against Palestinians. Well, what about Hamas? Distraction. This whole conversation about how to solve the problem of genocide is now what about something else? You've anti-logos that you've destroyed it. Everything. Tate. Andrew. Oh, I should stop talking about Andrew Tate. He's such a grub. What you're doing is harmful. Oh, shut up. I don't know. Let's not even get into that. Everywhere you see the functioning of the anti-logos that attacks the logos. So, okay, don't quite get that in chat. Can you say more? So, yes. So within the way of being that these people are familiar with, which has no logos, the only way of using language is to shut down the logos. In fact, that's what it means to be the wisest and smartest, because every one of us had a teacher or parental figure that shut down our logos at a certain stage where he seemed to be the most knowing and wise and strong and whatever. So this became our own shadow. They were shut down. Hurt people. Their logos were shut down, and they think it's knowing, whether they're aware of it or not. They're usually aware of what they're doing. They don't usually know why they're doing it. They're imitating their own pathologos image. Shadow of a shadow of a shadow of a shadow. That's why we're not solving our problems. That's why it's ignorance and bloodshed in all of the pages of history. Right. It's suffering and shutting down and murder and silencing. It's anti-logos all the way down, just like it's dialectic all the way up, which is cool. And Socrates is saying, get into this game and you'll find in the next life you'll find better people and gods to play this game with than you'll find here. So he's in good hopes, good spirits about his death. So we might not get all the way in our lifetime to completely removing the mechanisms that create and maintain the pathologos and the anti-logos, and create systems that are rational, fair, helpful, beneficial, that create the conditions for and the maintenance for the logos and the dialectic. We might not have that in our lifetime. We might. In fact, we might have to have this in our lifetime, because the technology means the implications of this can kill everyone and end our species. But even if we get quite a far way away, we can be of good spirits that we'll find people who have completed their journey, and I'll be there in the next level of reality. So that's something to be happy about, and a good reason to develop this while you're here, as for yourself, because you are part of according to the reasoning that we've been going through in Phaedo, you are yourself part of a cyclical process of life and death. And there's a learning in the initiation that you can take with you in the way up. So doesn't matter if the world doesn't come along, you're coming along. So good for you. But also, let's share this with the world. Let's awaken philosophy with the whole world, because why not? It's so simple. 2 kinds of relationships. That's all? Yeah. two kinds of logos, anti or pathologos and the self-logos. That's all. And you're saying it's myself? It's mine? Yep. I've had it the whole time? Oh, yeah. Well, how do I bring it out? Oh, easy. Dialectic. Really? What about all the problems? Oh, just apply the dialectic to that as well, like we're doing. It's dialectic all the way up? Yeah. What about good versus evil? No, it's not good versus evil. It's left versus right or lesser versus greater. But again, it's not verse. It's left to right in our physical world of becoming. It's lesser to greater through the logos. Why? Because analogy is lesser to greater. You learn about being a king to your people through understanding the shepherd to his sheep. All the way through Plato. That's what mythology is. Creating a lesser to create insight and understanding about the greater. That's learning. So it's not lesser versus greater. Use it. Create mythology. He's saying, hey, he talked about Aesop all the way through. Aesop should be making stories about this. Versus verse switch. Exactly. It's not verses. It's a switch. In the world of becoming, it's like a progression, but in the lesser to greater, if it's an incommensurable jump, it's a switch. It's exactly right. It's a jump. You've gone from meters to liters. You've gone from the world of becoming to the world of being. You've gone from your ignorance. Hey, if the pathologos is anti-logos, then you can't progress from that state of mind of being in your pathologos to knowing, because that logos is the method. Dialectic and logos. And the pathologos is anti-logos. You have to switch. Hey, look, I'm in a negative state of mind. I have all these self-defeating thoughts. My logos is bad. My self-logos, I can't think. My mind is bad. I'm of the nature of garbage. And my goals are bad. My one-self goals are bad. I can recognize that because I understand the dialectic and the logos enough. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to promise to go through philosophical midwifery later. I might even look at my dreams. I'm going to apply the dialectic to understand more about my false idea of myself, to do the work, my lifelong work on removing my false image of myself later. I promise. So I can jump into a better state of mind so I can do philosophy. That's the promise. That's our mind working with us. Yes, and buy the philosophical midwifery book to help learn how to do that. And we're going to learn as we go as well, but it's good to have both. It's a switch. This is why judging people's states of mind is good too. If they're in, and by the way, having a question is one way of switching from certainty of how crap you are or how bad everything is to wonder what's the possibilities through the self-logos and dialectic. Open and receptive state of mind is what we have a question for, is to be receptive to sharing in the logos for our learning and direct experience. So, wonder about the logos as we go. We talked about Xenophanes' question. What is the whole of seeing, hearing, and thinking right now? And what is it that's watching? Take that question. That's the one to wonder about. Or Socrates' question, what's the place like when I separate myself from the body? Hey, Socrates says, greater men who've completed their work here and greater gods with whom I can have fun with? What's that like in my next life, my next incarnation? These are all things to wonder about to help you flip the switch into a better state of mind. Cool.
Wow.
So, we're pointing out why it's not a personal criticism, because we recognize the people who have been brought up in this game might not recognize what we're doing. They might not be able to distinguish verses from switches or true progression. So they think, oh, you're just trying to shut me down, well, screw you. Or you're just trying to make me feel bad because that's our game. Who's right and wrong? Well, the person who's right gets to harm their enemies, right? Justice. The false idea of justice, of course, helping your friends and harming your enemies. Germany must kill the XYZ. America must invade the XYZ. Us versus them. Why? Because that's why, how you know you're right. If everything is just opinions, then the most powerful opinion wins. Not in this game. The opposite. It's not about beating someone or making them feel bad. That's not going to change their mind. That's just going to perpetuate the hate for those not in your cave. Look at that. You lose a debate. Oh, look at that bad people in that bad cave. They made me feel bad. I hate them even more. Like in the Middle East right now. People who've gone through a genocide are inflicting it again. Repeating cycles. So they might not recognize that it's not an us versus them game. It's simply following a progression through to the causes and conditions of our evolution to understand the causes of our problems, address them fairly with the logos so that everybody can solve their problems and be made happier and reach their highest destiny and be made fulfilled. Simple. That's all. So that's why I went out of my way to address that way of thinking that might misinterpret it as something from their own system. Actually, the troll from the chat that one time ages ago, but I'm grateful I've only had one so far. He used that. He said, "Oh, you just think your way of thinking is best." Literally, us versus them. I said, "Well, it's not my way of thinking. It's the logos. We're reading it from Socrates. It's not Socrates' way of thinking. Well, in one sense, it's my way, in that it's the self-logos, but it's also your way. I don't understand your point." From his perspective, it's only us versus them. There is no ultimate truth. There is no being. That's what Parmenides said is the greatest puzzle. The greatest problem we have to overcome is that one. They don't think there is a knowable objective level of reality that's understandable through the logos and directly apprehendable through our own intelligence and ousia. So he said, "Oh no, well then show that hierarchy of development that shows your way of thinking is the best to prove that you think yours is the best." Doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, it's either true or it's not. "Oh no, you're just repeating what somebody else said." What? Of course. If you say 1 + 1 is 2, you're repeating what Elmo on Sesame Street says. You're not as smart as Elmo. It's just the truth. It's remembering and discovering the truth that's already there. Doesn't matter who says it. It matters what's true. Not to them. There is no truth. That's Parmenides. The greatest difficulty we have to overcome is all this falls down, even in the face of someone very skilled in dialectic, if they can't get out of their state of thinking and entertain the possibility that there is a realm of being. There is something like truth. If they're so relativist, it's all relative to opinions, then they'll fight the truth even if it benefits them, because they can't imagine the truth. There's only us versus them, and you win by being an alpha. That means beating up everyone who's different. That's what racism is. So I'm saying, hey, it's not that game. It's a different ship. We're on a different boat going in a different direction. Mutual. It's cooperative. In the highest kind of sense, cooperative. Following the logos, sharing in the logos. Following a greater master. Following the head that even though you and I have different bodies, we share the same head. That head we're listening to. That's the being. It's unified up there. It's the logos up there. The cause of the logos down here. So that's a little bit of an aside of why it might be worth pointing out that this is not a blame game. Oh, you're just saying that because you're a leftist, will say the right. Oh, you're just saying that because you're a rightist, says the left. Both get to ignore the truth. See how freaking stupid it is. It's a way of dismissing it without listening to it, without understanding. It's the anti-logos, yeah. Anti-hopos. Anti-logos. So yeah, so let's go back to our dialectic. I think this idea should be later. So these are just the notes from which we're going to make our dialectic. Politics is wrong to use the image of left and right, as these are commensurate opposites, like asleep to awake or forgetting to remembering, which is actually through knowledge via the dialectic and self-logos. That would be a conclusion, so that would maybe be other back to self. So these are just the notes. I encourage you to do your own dialectic on this if you're interested, and exercising yourself in the best way. Actually, it's the relationship is the different one. It's not the commensurate opposites ones. It's the lesser through greater. So that's the opposite. The nature is pathologos versus self-logos dialectic. Therefore, the political party should be called the pathologos party instead of the conservative, and the self-logos dialectic party instead of the progressive, which is the actual names of conservative and progressionism. Which is the actual things, the actual nature of what they're doing. It's the true naming. True naming, of course, important in the dialectic. Therefore, we no longer pick sides and play us versus them. If you give them the right names, no one would pick the pathologos party. Even if you're really, really attracted to them, like 40% of people are, you still wouldn't pick it. Yeah, a lot of people like sadistic things, but no one is going to pass a law saying it's okay to do sadistic things. People do it trying to get away with it in various ways, which is pretty worth addressing. So we'd only have one political party, but even them would have the standard. Everything they'd have to do would have to be according to the self-logos and dialectic, because that's actually progression, that's actually empathy, that's actually being rational. Therefore, we no longer pick sides. By the way, picking sides is that problem party to begin with. So even if they're saying, oh, we're the progressive, we're the left, you're still in the same game. You're still implying that there are two sides equals an opposite progression relationship. We no longer pick sides and play the us versus them game, which is inherent to the pathologos, which is not a personal criticism, an attack, or a blame game. It's simply what followed from the conditions and causes of human evolution. And instead, apply the paradigm of truth and true virtue. Which is self, logos, and dialectic. To all. Lawmakers and laws and other implications that follow, all jobs. And institutions. Hey, you're involved in a learning institution? Are you following the logos? Are you learning the dialectic on day one? Or are you belonging to some crazy church that teaches all anti-logos or pathologos from a 6,000-year-old ancient religion or 2,000-year-old ancient religion or whatever? Oh, so you're not in the education, you're in the pathologos game. Keep going. Justice system. Is the justice system doing what's best to understand the causes of every problem as the pathologos, and then addressing the individual, helping them find what they need to solve their problem individually and get back onto the path of the self-logos towards their destiny? Are you then learning from that individual instance to see what were the conditions and causes of him being in that place in the first place, so that we can, as a society, address flowers grow in their environment they grow in. Yeah, poverty causes crime. So address poverty. In a similar way, certain things in our world will be more creating of our pathologos. Therefore, we need to address them. So address the individual with their two questions, help them with their problem, help them reach their destiny, and then society. What is a problem in our society so we can get rid of that and create the conditions and causes for reaching our destiny as a human being and as a society. Keep going. Amazon, hey, Bezos, you're exploiting and hurting all these individual people. Are you acting according to the logos and true self-benefit, or are you sneaking in your ignorance and your harm, your sadism, by being a petty tyrant within the corporate structure? Exploiting people, not caring for them. Is what you're doing serving the logos or the pathologos? Simple. If it's serving the pathologos, fix it. If it's serving the logos, hey, more power to you. Right, there is a section in some religious texts that have the word logos. I think the start of the Gospel of John talked about in the beginning was the self-logos, and the self-logos was from God, and without God there could not be self-logos. So that implies, at least at the beginning, without the self there could not be the logos, which is very in line with what we're talking about. But after that first section, it deteriorates into his own pathologos, and that's a different conversation. And in fact, there is a fantastic book if you're interested in the nature of the logos of the Bible and or the various people, because many different writers of the Bible, therefore many different questions of where you at on the logos and where's your problem, where you at, where you're stuck. You know, the two questions we ask: hey, where you at? How far through the logos are you? And where you stuck? What's your pathologos like? And let's apply the dialectic to each. Therefore, if there's 50 different authors in the Bible, there'll be 50 different levels of both. Levels of vision and understanding of that vision, and levels of ignorance and problem playing out. Famously, one of the most disgusting and terrible is of Paul. So the Christian tradition is mainly Pauline, ignores most of Mark, ignores the beginning of John, and accepts the pathologos of Paul. And there's historical reasons why people who wanted to oppress and bring in the Dark Ages and fight holy wars and oppress women and torture people, why they'd be attracted to Paul's pathologos. The same why people would be attracted to Trump, why certain people would be attracted to Hitler, and so on. It's not personal, but there's a great book about it. Jesus and Socrates, A Dialogue in Heaven by Dr. Pierre Grimes. Fantastic. 2 thumbs up from me. And a peace sign from me. And a double peace sign from me. Confetti. I recommend that book. So it's a conversation with Socrates and Jesus talking about how well they did, what was their logos and their pathologos, how well their logos, what's logos, understanding and knowledge, how well was their knowledge or vision, and how well was their logos or understanding in communicating that vision. Especially since in the text we're reading now of the Phaedo, he talks about adding the logos to Aesop's fables and writing his own songs. Did he? I don't have any of those. I'd love to read those fairy tales when I was a kid. And also Jesus, how high was his vision? How high was his logos, ability to understand that vision? And what was his problem? Because I don't think that Jesus had pathologos back in that, had an understanding of pathologos in midwifery. In fact, the understanding of midwifery is in applying the dialectic to address your pathologos. Socrates had that, of course. We can see it in the text. Although it may not have passed beyond him because Socrates didn't write anything down, which might have been one of his problems. I don't know. It's in the book. Check out the book. It's fascinating. Socrates and Jesus talking about the two questions, where they were at, where they were stuck. Of course, both have the vision and the logos, or the ignorance and the pathologos. So what was their vision? What was the logos? Where they're stuck? And what were the implications to humanity? So I recommend getting that book and using it and making your own dialectic of that book. What was their problem and what were the implications? What was the implications of Jesus' logos having to go through Paul, who had he was a murderer. He went around killing people. Apparently he had a change of heart, but there's nothing to suggest that he fundamentally addressed his problem? Of course not. So what's the implications of Jesus's logos going through Paul, and what was the implications of Socrates' logos going through Plato? And what can we learn about our stage of human development now as a result? And as we should all ask, because we're philosophers,
You're a wizard, Harry.
how can we be more excellent? How can we use that to, as a logos of understanding, to reflect back on ourselves to reach a higher level of development? Keep the conversation rolling forward. Life is a conversation. Keep it rolling. Which is why people stuck in their anti-logos will do what they can to silence conversation. Don't speak up. Don't read the text. You're a this or a that. You're bad or you're evil or you're poisonous or something or other. Therefore, not only do I not talk to you, I shouldn't talk to you. But we, as a philosopher, we keep the conversation alive. In fact, there are some Platonic dialogues where Socrates is very artful in how he keeps the conversation alive. In the face of people who are being triggered and they realize, uh-oh, I'm going to lose my sophist business. Like these right-wing grifters who like sell courses on how to be alpha or whatever. As soon as somebody asks hard questions, they realize, uh-oh, I'm going to lose my income. I'm going to shut this crap down now. Same thing happened to Socrates. He'd meet these sophists, which are false philosophers, claiming to be knowing, who had a lot of students and made a lot of money and a lot of fame. Again, lover of the body, fame and riches. And then Socrates would come in and they'd try and shut that crap down fast. But Socrates could navigate it. Hey, I could leave whenever I want to, but I think some people want me to stick around. Do you? Yay, Socrates, stick around. There are some cool dialogues like that we can get into a bit later. So, if we recognize, which is the implications from our understanding, that we have the true names, pathologos party and self-logos dialectic party, we would have a standard. Hey, the progressives have to be actually progressive. But also no one would want to vote for the pathologos party, even if you secretly wanted to, because that's just a sickness. You don't make laws encouraging murderers just because some people like to murder. In which case, we would no longer pick sides because this wouldn't exist and this has a standard. And so we would have a standard, so you're not picked based on what pathologos is similar enough to your upbringing or what you happen to like. You would have a standard like anything else. You have a standard for who becomes a doctor. You have a standard for who becomes a personal trainer. So instead, we would apply the paradigm of truth and true virtue because we want truth and we want the true virtues that happens through phronesis in some way. So sneaking in our question, which we still got, what the heck is phronesis and why is it some sort of initiation into true virtue? That doesn't lose its power and therefore is a learning that we can take with us into our next life, which is fascinating. What do you say, Owen?
Wow. 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 Wow.
Owen Wilson's whole family said, well then. So sneaking in our question, the paradigm of truth and true phronesis, true virtue, which is the self-logos and dialectic. We apply that to all lawmakers and laws, not just the corruption that exists now. Politicians getting paid off to earn more, let billionaires be more billionaires so they get kickbacks, which is not the self-logos or dialectic. Harming not just everybody else, but the entire planet and also their souls. Short-term benefit for the expense of their souls. Then creating a world that, hey, they get short-term benefit, but wouldn't they like to live in a harmonious world instead of having to live in gated communities? So it benefits everyone, whether they're aware of it or not. So we apply the self-logos and dialectic to all things and all jobs and institutions. Justice system, education system, the Amazon packing firm. No more exploitation and torture of human beings for the personal profit of billionaires. That's bullshit. Let's stop it. Why? We can, because we have the paradigm. So this is the implications that follow from our learning applied to the problems of the everyday world. And also we'd have to come to the conclusion that we can't call it left and right anymore. That's a fundamental lie. It's not left and right. That's the other kind of relationship. It's lesser and greater. Lesser actually pathologos, greater, actual, self-logos, and dialectic. So we have a standard to apply to the left now, and we have a way of understanding the true nature of the right. So it's not left or right at all. So no more picking sides. In fact, let's drop left and right. Pathologos or self-logos. That's the game. And it's collectively and it's internally. As we've been saying, we have the two voices. The pathologos voice is the louder one, unfortunately. And the quieter one is the voice of the daemon, the self-logos. Our higher self, our higher voice. And that's what we're learning to see in our text. That's why we're reading what we're doing, why we're reading the Phaedo. So we can see it more clearly and we can recognize it and notice it better. But our question was, what about the nature of this man versus bear problem? That was the first question. We've gone the long way around. We addressed the greater difficulty, the collective human difficulty, the political difficulty, society. We've illuminated the even higher, the nature of our own soul and problems. But we've got to come all the way around, and we've addressed the greater and the ultimate, but we've got to come back around and address the lesser, the particular. The man versus bear. Meme debate. If you were stuck in the woods, if you were alone in the woods, would you rather run into a man or a bear? And can we use this to understand that question? Okay, so do we have enough from our reflection, from our summary, from bringing it all together, by having a fun little dialectic, taking the notes from which we can make another dialectic about politics, understanding the true nature of our political system and why it's there? Do we have enough from that to answer our question about the bear? The meme bear debate thing? Well, if we're using the two relationships to understand that, what can we see? Well, the left and right dynamic is inherent to the movement of left and right is inherent to the physical world. The shadow, the cause of the worst injustices and vice, is to do with the mind. You have to have what you need to reach knowledge. You have to have the mechanisms in place of logos, mind, and reaching for self that leads us to knowledge. You have to have that mechanisms in place to have what you need for the shadow. Meaning humans have this shadow of knowledge, the cause of their vice. What doesn't? Things in the physical world. What's in the physical world? Them be bears in the physical world. So the bear will be moving from a awake and asleep, hungry and fed, tired and well rested, bored and aggressive, sexually aggressive and not in heat, and so on. Regular, predictable, left and right movement of a bear. What doesn't have a bear? What does a bear not have? This. Animals do not have the pathologos. Animals would not act in such a terrible, unjust, vice-ridden, sadistic way to other members of their family and species as humans do. What we need for our development to true virtue and enlightenment also creates the shadow, meaning we have what we need for our, as we have what we need for our greatest justice and excellence, we have what we need for our greatest injustice. Humans murder and torture and genocide each other and have done for thousands of years. Animals don't. Why? This. That's the nature of that problem. The question, the meme debate, hey, what happens when you point out to the conservative or the right wing or the fascist people that they're actually a pathologos party? They will act fascist. Their nature, well, their group that they have bound themselves and their self-identity to, their way of being, hey, tell a racist it's okay to be racist, they'll love that crap. And what are they being encouraged to do? Through Trump and the fascist, well, you mean, Trump's just a comical example. I don't mean him specifically. All of these grifters. They say, oh, yeah, it's a good to be fascist. By the way, I'm going to be more fascist than you. I'm going to be picking your pocket, but I'm allowing you to be fascist to the immigrants or to the women or to the people of different color skin. While I be super fascist to you. That's the grift. That's the grift. Right? That famous quote, tell a white man that that even the worst white man is inherently better than the best black man, and he'll be so happy you can pick his pocket. In fact, tell him that he'll give you his wallet himself. That's the grift. So, recognizing that as part of the human condition is absolutely freaking necessary to solve our problems and reach our highest. Why? Our vice, the reason why we'd rather meet a bear than a human being is because we have vice. We have the disgusting, sadistic, unjust playing out of the implications of our pathologos, necessary for our evolution into consciousness and logos and intelligence and language, but no longer needed. In fact, we need to therefore learn the dialectic to address and remove our problems, our vice, to free us to move from asleep to awake, to allow us to evolve, actually progress into knowledge. So, simple. Animals don't pathologos each other. Add any example, genocide each other and so on. Torture each other. People opposed to the logos say, well, oh, no, yeah, but I've seen a cat play with a mouse, play with his food. That's sadistic. No, not the same. It's not the pathologos. It's the moving and back and forth of playful or bored of a cat. It's not systematically oppressing the self-logos, self-mind, and oneself nature of other human beings of the species and passing it on to other family members. To maintain a conservatism, a blind allegiance to the pathologos, injustice inherited through the family clan, the family curse. Animals don't do that crap. So, would you rather... And this is why women always pick the bear, or mostly pick the bear. Because the question is not, would you rather... Like, a would you rather question is like two similar kinds of things. Would you rather ice cream or to be poked in the eye? That's not a would you rather. Because one's good, one's bad. You'd always pick the good. So would you rather ice cream or cake? That's the would you rather. Or on the other side, would you rather be poked in the eye or punched in the gut? That's the would you rather, because they're both bad. Equally so, this question of would you rather meet a bear in the woods versus would you rather meet a man in the woods? Not, or would you rather meet, your father, or would you rather meet a nice, polite, a ranger, someone whose job it is to find lost people in the woods? No, it's think of a terrible man and what terrible men could do to a woman in the woods, and compare it to what a bear would do. So what's the question? You can say that this is the nature of all questions, really. If essentially there are two kinds of relationships and there are two kinds of games in town, or two kinds of questions we're here to solve. One, where you're stuck, or the pathologos. And number two, where you're at in the logos. If that's the essence of what it means to be human, and we are simply playing out in everyday life in real time the implications of one and or the other or both, then you can say all memes are essentially this. Just as we said, all governments are essentially the language of the pathologos, right versus left, which is confusing. Hey, it's not right versus left. If we were animals only, sure, we could say right versus left, because all the physical world is characterized by this kind of becoming from one to another in a state of becoming. So yeah, maybe if that's what we were, if we were bears, you could say right versus left. But we're not bears. We're these people with the potential to reach the highest good, fulfill the destiny of humankind, and fulfill our individual destiny and the destiny of all species. We have that potential. But unfortunately or unfortunately, depend on what perspective you have, what level you're at, and what vision you have, we also have the shadow of that. Of course we do. Meaning we have the potential for the greatest good and the greatest bad. Not evil. It does not seek this as the ultimate end. It's the distortion. It's the shadow of what we really want. Which is good because we have the opportunity to solve this. And in fact, that's what we're here for. We wouldn't have come into this world with such a pathologos if we did not have to see something about it. And if we come carrying it, if we choose our life in some way as a soul, as part of what Socrates is saying, the cyclical coming to life and coming to death, dying and coming back to life again, if there's something that motivated us, which must necessarily follow for it to be rational, thumbs up, then there'd be a reason why we picked a family in this culture, family, time period to give the specific one we're here to do. And equally so, humans are at a certain level of development that require them to address their pathologos. And now we're out of time. Literally. We have to address our pathologos as a species now or never. Well, that's it, kaput for humans. We'll be one of the many species who have gone extinct, and we won't fulfill our human destiny, which has a part to play within a greater destiny that we also share in. Therefore, it's imperative. There's a moral imperative to put aside our allegiances to what feels right, to what we're used to what's normal within our family or culture, our allegiance to our unconscious, unsuspected, false allegiance to, false loyalty to, false beliefs about the self, the mind, the logos, and the nature of reality. We have to. But actually, it's the best thing to do. It's worth doing. Literally, it's the best thing to do. Why? So we can solve the problem of why we would choose the bear in the woods. Solve our vices. By recognizing it's the shadow of knowledge, and the method of climbing the true ladder and purifying ourselves from the false ladder is the same, dialectic. So, understand all memes, essentially that question. If there are two kinds of relationships and two kinds of games, logos and anti-logos, a meme's going to be expression of either. You got a debate bro channel, it's going to be either. There's going to be a person trying their best to portray the anti-logos, to silence the logos, to maintain their own pathologos, or they're going to be people doing their best to remedy that through the dialectic at whatever level they're at, or do their best to share in the logos to actually progress and learn and develop. It's going to be one of those two kinds of groups. These two are kind of in the same group, applying the dialectic to solve problems and or applying the dialectic to reach your highest understanding of the nature of being and self, or using the whatever skills you've learned in your lifetime to silence the logos to maintain your ignorance or your false belief about knowledge, and whatever shadows of benefit you think you'll gain from doing that, including grifting. Pick a meme, you'll find it. Pick a podcast, you'll find it. Pick a website, you'll find it. You know, the ones in which there's some sort of contention about the nature of the good. Make sense? Would you rather something that is just going through a regular movement of back and forth as part of the natural laws? Or someone who's willing to do the worst injustice because they're a human being and they have that capacity? That's the meme. That's why people are picking bears. They don't know that's why they're picking bears, and that's why there's the fallout happening. People saying, oh, why would you pick bears? That just shows you that feminists are this. That just shows you that women are this. I hope you get picked by a bear so you get eaten. That's their pathologos reaction. Same shit, the same reason why they didn't like it. Why? Because we have to awaken philosophy in our species now. Because the men don't have the understanding of why that's the case, number one. So they're going to react hostilely. They're going to continue the cycle of violence. Women don't have the understanding of why that's the case, and therefore can't articulate it as good as they could, or as they probably would like to. Hey, this is why I got pathologos, and this is how it manifests towards women. Why is that important for both? And the implication is we don't have what we need to therefore solve the problem that this illuminates for us. Hey, we have this huge freaking problem. Neither party, nor all humans, don't have the language, the understanding needed to recognize the nature of the problem, name the problem accurately, follow the implications of the problem, to solve the problem, and therefore develop as we are here to do right now. Okay? Those very things we did ourselves over here. What do? We saw the nature of the problem. It was our political system isn't left and right like a bear. We're not bears, we're people. Therefore, left versus right is not left versus right like a bear. It is lesser versus greater like a human. Therefore, that's the nature of the problem. Therefore, we should name the problem. Hey, it's not conservative versus progressive. It's pathologos versus self-logos dialectic. Why? Because that's literally what it means to be progressive. Why pathologos? That's what it means to conserve where you're currently at. One's stagnant, one's progressive. If on the nature of the problem or the cause, we gave it the right name, we saw how it functions, but also we saw what would function, what would be the how this understanding would function. We would have to therefore no longer pick sides, because we recognize that's just an aspect of the pathologos. And then the implications. What follows as a result? Take it back home again. Well, actually, we've got further implications of, so instead we would give it the right name. Our first thing is, this is what it actually is. This is the nature of the problem. A fundamental lie. It's not left versus right. It's lesser versus greater. We're a human, not a bear. Number two, demonstration. Naming, defining it. It's the pathologos party and the self-dialectic party. Okay, how would that demonstrate itself? We would no longer pick sides, but we would have to apply the if we recognize that it's a pathologos party, we wouldn't offer that out. You can't vote for badness. That doesn't make sense. And also, we wouldn't just accept any old nonsense and hope and change and rhetoric instead of actual progression. We'd have to imply a standard of the self-dialogos for the beneficial. which is no different than any other profession, really. You require understanding and knowledge of your pilot and your doctor and so on. If they don't, we call them corrupt and they would lose their license. Okay, how will that divide into other things? Well, all laws and jobs and institutions we talked about. The justice system, the education system, the Amazon packing company. That's the division. And finally, take it all home. From all that back to self, what's our conclusion? We actually put this first, but it should go at the end. So take the notes or your own insights and make your own and put it in the right order. That's the activity. That's the question I'm giving to you. Therefore, politics is wrong to use the image of left and right, since these are commensurate opposites. That's bear talk, like asleep and awake, or forgetting to remembering, actual true knowledge, which happens through the dialectic and self-logos and nous. It's wrong to use that. In fact, what's true is it's actually lesser and greater. We ain't bears, we're humans. So stop using left and right. That's a lie. It's not a big change. It's not a difficult change. Just a matter of demonstrating what we're defining and sharing it. Interesting? I hope that was interesting. I hope you found something to wonder about. I hope you think on it. I hope you maybe use, if you're interested enough, use it as a dialectic. But this was just an example of why we're doing what we're doing and what we can benefit from doing what we're doing. We're in the middle of what can be a complicated or maybe even a dry sounding argument from Socrates. So that voice can come and say, hey, that's dry. That's 2,500 years ago. Who cares what Socrates says? Who cares if he says the soul's immortal? I want to feel it, but I don't want to go through. I mean, I'd love to know that my soul is immortal. That sounds like amazing. But, these arguments, they're tedious and they're dry, and they're translating it from Greek to English is complicated and sometimes wordy and, why should I care? Well, this is a little example of using what we're learning and applying it to our everyday world. To little fun things like that bear versus man meme debate. To important things like the nature of our world and solving problems that can help all of us, that we're all suffering through. Making it real for us, making it important for us, making it alive for us. And we recognized earlier that that's the movement from Apollo philosophy, which has a natural rhythm and flow and reasoning, and we can get into the groove of, to seeing how it applies to our self, our life, and getting inspired by it, using it, making it our own. Aphrodite. Seeing the beauty and the insights that come from using philosophy. That should inspire, and these two would inspire us to do Apollo more. They're a pair. This would inspire us to do more philosophy. That inspires us to see more insights. By the way, insights are commensurate with enlightenment. So the greater the insights, the greater your enlightenment experience or state of mind, which then inspires you to do more Apollo, more philosophy, get back into the Phaedo, which then gives you what you need for more application to your real life. Greater enlightenment, which sounds like definition and demonstration, which sounds like understanding and experience. Wow.
Systems are now fully operational.
Your systems will be fully operational, and you'll say,
Wow.
yeah. By the way, those two things are a kind of relationship, Aphrodite and Apollo, that lead into each other, that go back and forth in a curious kind of way, that feed each other, that inspire you to what? Reach the ultimate, which is the single head that has these two bodies, and that ultimate is Hermes, which is a god that represents in mythology dialectic.
Wow.
Which is what we're doing. We're feeding Apollo and Aphrodite back, our understanding and our insights, our reading and our application to our memes and our political system and our everyday world. Feeding back on each other. They complement each other. So what? Is it a left and right? Maybe. Is it a greater and lesser? Maybe too. I'm not sure. As a question, is Aphrodite and Apollo lesser and greater, or left and right? Maybe left and right. I'm not sure. Could be lesser and greater because there's the ultimate. Because why? Because they both attach together. Although we have to go back and forth in our physical world, we have to learn to have something to create insights, and we need the insights to keep going in our learning. So that's why I have recaps as much as I have reading in this series, this podcast. Apply it to everyday world sometimes, get back into the text other times. Which is fun, makes it fun. What else are we going to do? We're not here to race through it so we can get a good grade and a pat in the head and then read some other book and forget about it. No, we're here to develop. We need to take time. We need to reflect. We need to repeat, make a habit of repeating this doctrine and developing it and understanding and applying it. That's the game. It's a human game. It's the best quest in town.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
So maybe it's a left and right. But maybe both of them together is a lesser that leads into the greater of Hermes. Because you need to be learning to have what you need to see the dialectic. You need to be applying it to have what you need to inspire you, to make it meaningful, to give it stakes. This was today. We applied it to understanding, to solving the world's problems. Which is a kind of a joke, because normally when you say that, it's easily dismissed, because how many people actually solve the world's problems? It's kind of a joke. But it's kind of not a joke, because it's Socrates. In fact, it's not just Socrates. Socrates is sharing in that which is true. Hey, anyone who's doing their life's work, says Socrates, will follow me to the place where I'm going as quick as they can. This is universal. So in one sense, it's not a joke. In fact, the actual way of solving problems is this. So even though it's kind of funny to say it because we don't normally talk about this much, but we need to. We need to awaken philosophy. Make this what we talk about. It's the funnest thing to talk about over coffee, literally. It's the best thing. And any other conversation is going to be doing it anyway. Conversations are going to be that which solidifies your pathologos or your anti-logos, or it's going to be conversations that are about what you're really interested in, bringing you into a state of wonder or curiosity that will lead you up towards the truth. But it's going to be a side quest. Every side quest is things that you think are good or think are going to be you need to prepare yourself for the true good. And you might not be aware that everything that you do is seeking the good. So you say, all other coffee talk is a side quest. So the difference is we're learning the game rules. Turn the side quests into the main quest. Do the dialectic on self-related, self-term ideas. Or the Phaedo. The soul, like we're doing today, the soul. Knowledge, which is a self-er idea. Equal, which we did last time. Beauty itself, which we do often as our own examples. Yeah, that's the real coffee talk.
Wow.
So, stuff the side quests, take the main quest. And don't get dragged into the anti-logos, which will just solidify the pathologos, making it harder to take the main quest. Anti-logo stuff, gossip, talking about material possessions and fame, riches, or love of the body, that kind of stuff. Mundane, the physical world stuff, the bear stuff, back and forth of bears. You're not a bear, you're a human, which means, yeah, you can do the worst things, but you can also do the best things. You don't have to just go back and forth between food or whatever. Honey and picnic baskets. You can actually move up towards our true quest. So yeah. So we're doing, that's the wonderful thing about philosophy. We're not putting anything in. As we read in the Republic, Socrates saying about learning. Actually, let's bring it up because we are learning about learning in the Phaedo. So let's bring up this book 7 we've been looking at. Here. I'm going to be making the same point, but it's good to have the text with us because the text helps us to see clearly. So, Book 7 of the Republic the section we've been going back to, where he talks about phronesis, the vice version of wisdom. We took the shadow version, like device, the shadow, the non-bear version of wisdom. He's also talking about learning, which is relevant to what we're talking about now. Socrates says, surely then, if this is true, our consideration concerning selves must be the following. An education is not the same thing as some who proclaim it, the teachers, say it is, since they say there is no innate knowledge in the soul. They somehow insert it, as if they were inserting sight into blind eyes. Cram school. So they say, says Glaucon. But the present logos indicates the same innate power does exist in the soul of everyone, including the organ, the eye of the soul, the eye of the mind, by which everyone does learn, just as if the eye weren't unable to see in any other way other than being turned along with the whole body from the darkness towards the light, so also this organ must be turned with the whole soul, from the place of becoming to the place of being, until she may be able to endure the contemplation. Hey, it's brilliant, apparently. The most brilliant light of being. You got to get used to it. Keep going back there. If you can pull it off, keep going. Keep doing this. That is what we say is good. So, why did I bring this up? Well, I'm saying we're talking about this anyway. We're not learning the dialectic to put in something. We already have it. We're already doing it no matter what. We have the two voices talking to us. We have the thoughts reflecting either the pathologos or the logos. Our problem or our destiny, our fate or our destiny. Every conversation is going to be about one of those. At various levels of intensity or levels of distraction or side quests. It might not be ultimate injustice, but it might be a little bit of injustice, a little side quest of the problem, or it might not be the ultimate truth, but a side quest of truth, the truth about something else, the truth about what's the best movie of the, not sure if that, what category that fits in. Fun conversations, positive ones, but are not necessarily about the self-logos. But here's saying, hey, look, don't accept the side quests. You're doing it anyway. You have it in your soul anyway. So we're learning the dialectic to play the game right. To become rational. To do best. To remove our vices, become better souls that way, but also have the most fun. Have the excellence. The most good. And that's learning. It's recalling what we once knew. So this was a little bit of an aside. Oh, and just for fun, let's bring it all together. Where's the other text? This one? No. Yeah, so you could do your dialectic on man vs. bear, but yeah, this was a little bit of a side, making it personal, making it real, applying it to, not real, making it, yeah, I guess more immediate for us. But the thing was, in that section we just read, what made all the difference was applying it to the realm of being or the realm of becoming. So when you talk about you're having this conversation anyway, is it the being or the becoming? Are you at having coffee talking about something in the world of becoming? Because you have to turn the whole soul away from the place of becoming. Are you gossiping about people? Are you gabbing about clothes? Are you saying who's the best, I don't know, sports player? Or are you just using the sports players as a way of contemplating the truth about, hey, was it a beautiful game? What's beauty? Was the referee make a just call? What's justice? Turning the whole soul from the place of becoming to the place of being. So that's how we would upgrade our coffee talk. and applying the dialectic as best we can. So I'm going to, one last thing before we say goodbye today is I am going to pull up the section from Proclus's Elements of Theology where he outlines the different gods. Because we're talking about bouncing back and forth in a bear-like fashion from, because we're still in the realm of becoming, there's the head, of course, but of understanding and experience, or learning, reading the text and applying it to everyday world concerns, or making it real for us, making it significant for us. And as a way of explaining why we go on these sort of side quests. Here we go. So we're jumping into the Elements of Theology. So it's Proclus, a teacher at the academy that Plato started, gone through Plato's text and realized he uses the gods in a certain kind of way. Mythologically, that's relevant because mythology is a huge part of the Phaedo that we're reading, and Socrates is encouraging us to do as well. So we might use Spider-Man and the Avengers to mythologize our concepts. Or video games again. But we're looking at how Plato used them. So let's jump in. To see Apollo, Aphrodite, and Hermes, the ones we've been talking about. Okay, from the top. There's our picture here. Hermes, Apollo, Aphrodite. Notice Apollo and Aphrodite at the bottom. Not sure what side you'd put them on. I might switch them, but there you go. Now, on the one hand, the remaining triad, the last of the four triads of the Olympian gods, is the anagogic. That's the word we've been using all the way along, and today. Anagogic is moving from lesser to greater. So because we're not bears, we're humans, we want to know how do we get from the lesser to the greater in our souls, so we're not a scary man in a forest, scarier even than a bear, but a good man, the ideal, the excellence of man. But also, how do we get from the realm of becoming through our physical senses to the realm of being? How do we move up? Anagogic is the word. There's a whole triad of 3 of the 12 gods are about how to move up, according to Plato. You got the demiurgic, the guardian, the vivific, and the final one is the anagogic. So we're right on. We want to know what this is. Of the remaining anagogic triad, Hermes is the leader. He elevates souls. Wow, that's what we want.
Wow.
Through her, and he sends upwards the whole and partial souls.
Wow.
Whatever level we're on. To the good self. That's the ultimate term. Lesser to greater to the ultimate.
Wow.
Systems are now fully operational.
That's what you'd be saying if you were all the way there. We often call it the one self, but in Plato he calls it the good self or the one self. You could pick either of those. So here's what moves everything up. Here's what takes us to our destiny. Know thyself, the good self. How? Dialectic. Her dialectic powers. It's a power, and it's the dialectic. Wow. So, if this is the top, if it's the top of the pyramid of the anagogic triad, the most important one for human beings, because we are in that anagogic movement, we are here to learn and develop, and Hermes is the top, it is the most significant thing for us to focus on as a philosopher, according to Plato and Socrates. What is it? The dialectic. It's the dialectic. Yay for us. Because we've been learning that. That's what we've been doing. Even if we're applying it to bear memes, or even if we're applying it to the political system, and the history of politics and humanity, whatever level, it's the same games, the same thing. Pick a period in history, you can understand it with that. Or our soul, lesser, greater, ultimate. So good for us. We've been doing what is the most important thing according to Plato. Hermes, the leader of the anagogic triad. Okay, what two things does he break down into? Or if we are aiming for Hermes, where do we start? What are the two things we have to put together that will lead us to Hermes ourselves? Okay, the middle term, which is the vivivic, it's the power term. What gives us the power? Aphrodite is the first efficient vivivic cause. It's the first of all of the causes that has the effectiveness, efficient. Actually, I want to nail down this word. See, I would say it's the first vivivic term, but the word is efficient, effective, efficacious. So I want to get it for myself. Make it my own. So I am going to bring up our little game of nailing down the exact Greek, which we would not be able to do until this part of history. Why? Because we've only had the internet for a short amount of time. And why else? Well, we've only had access to these texts for a short amount of time, and we've only had a translation from someone who actually includes the Greek and has himself been a philosopher. Very few actual philosophers who've been doing both philosophy and midwifery have ever translated before. It's new. Balboa is such a man. So, we have what we need to reach our destiny and solve our problems, but only now, which is amazing.
Wow.
Which is why I am doing my best to share this, and I hope you share it too, and I hope you use it too, and you talk about it too, because we're right where we need to be in terms of time, and this is what we need to be doing. And we haven't had the ability to, we haven't had the sufficient or the ideal conditions and causes to do it up until now, for many reasons, but including having the text. And this is why we have the text, which can copy the Greek, and we have this internet thingy over here. Thank you, Jarvis.
Importing all preferences from home interface.
Yep, you're doing fine, Jarvis. So we can nail it down ourselves. We can all do it. Gone to the days where you'd be murdered if you had the text, or if you had it in a text in a language you could read. That was the Dark Age. That was like 1,000 years of our history, not too far away as well. We can actually have it ourselves and have it master it ourselves. Protogos. And we have this. Protogos. You can tell us how to say it. Protogos. Which is cool. Isn't this cool that we can do it? I think it's cool. All right. We can also paste it in this. And we have an ancient Greek dictionary. How many of those are at your library? It's fantastic that we have this. It's so good that we have the internet. Protogos. Primary. Interesting. Oh, okay. So this is cause. Right. So it's the primary cause. Interesting. The first effective. Right. Oh, I see. Oh, interesting. Okay. So a translator has helped us out a little bit by tying the word first with all these other ones. It's the first cause, but it's the effective cause, it's the efficient cause, it's the efficacious cause. I would say vivivic cause, because it's the vivivic term. Through insights of love which pervades wholes, and adapts, reconciles, familiarizes the lives that are elevated by herself to the beautiful. Right, so we apply what we learn. Let's just go on to Apollo. Apollo in the third place. Okay, so Apollo is the last one. Perfects and converts all through a moving at once through music, which Socrates says in the Phaedo is the true music is philosophy, of course. As Socrates says in that, but also for the Greeks, it means any creation where you, in the symposium, Socrates points out, when we say music, it's one of those things that have been appropriated by one branch. the musicians. But actually, music means anything that is brought from the world of being into the realm of becoming, or vice versa. A creation of the realm of being into the realm of becoming. So, philosophy is the best. The best kind of creation that we can perceive in the world of becoming that is of the world of being and can elevate us with Aphrodite to Hermes. Okay, through music, draws up and attracts through harmony and rhythm to the light, which is also there to intellectual truth. So, turning of the whole soul around to the brilliant light of being that we just read in the Republic happens through Apollo, which has a kind of harmony and rhythm that directs you towards that light, which we have in our souls, which is the intellectual truth. Truth, of course, that we seek as our goal as in philosophy, according to the Phaedo, along with Phronesis. So that's Apollo, philosophy, reading these texts. We have to be reading these texts, but also we have to be applying it to our lives, adapting it to our lives. Here, familiarizing and adapting what we learn in Apollo to our lives. That will elevate us to the beautiful. And it will give us insights because they pervade all of the wholes. It applies to bears, to governments, to our soul, to even the higher levels of reality. So therefore, it's the somehow it's the first cause or the effective cause, first effective cause. I would say first inspiring cause, or the vivic cause. That's a puzzle. How we'd read that. Anyway, Apollo into Aphrodite. And the two of them work together. So we read the text and we apply it to our lives. We familiarize it to ourselves. We adapt it. Someone in the chat was saying, I'm going to go to the flea market and practice asking these questions. It's like the agora of today. Absolutely. Go for it. I'm going to create my own art. Yep, do it. I'm going to do my own little dialectics. I'm going to have my own documents where I have my own dialectics and all the things I learn as we read. Yes, apply it, and that will give you insights. But you need the material, Apollo, and then you have to apply it, Aphrodite. And then you'll see it's not a dry thing. It awakens. It becomes alive. You will awaken philosophy. The name of the channel. Isn't it good when a character in a movie says the name of the movie? These two will awaken philosophy. And them two together leads up to that which sends upwards our whole and partial souls, which is Hermes, which leads us all the way to our ultimate cause, our first cause and our final cause, progression and reversion, returning through the hero's journey back to that was there, to where we started, to see what was there the whole time, like we were doing with our dialectics today. The good self. So what is it that takes all humans to their destiny? Hermes, which is what? The dialectic.
Wow. 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 Wow.
Wow. That's what we're doing. So half the time we'll be doing Apollo, reading the text. Half the time we'll be applying it to whatever we're interested in our lives to gain new insights, which will make us love it, make us more real, make us more interesting, say beautiful, make it cool, take it from something dry to something alive, awaken philosophy for us. Apollo and Aphrodite, the logos of the Plato's texts, true music, and Aphrodite, the love when we apply it, definition and demonstration together awaken philosophy, which is awakening that which elevates us to our goal, our highest destiny, the real object of any coffee talk if we're serious. Well, not serious, having fun, but if we're, if we're on the main quest and not the side quests, which is the good self or the one self. Through what? The dialectic. Wow. So we're on the right track, folks. Interesting, worth seeing. I hope you found that fun. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that inspires you to do it yourself. read or read with me and apply it as much as you can. Go to the flea market, make your own art to represent what you've created in your dialectic first. Create the Apollo I was going to say use Apollo, your dialectic, to make it your own through Aphrodite, but the dialectic is Hermes, so they're all together, right? Look at the diagram. But that's why we're so interested in the dialectic. Why? It helps us solve bear man meme debates that are going to be popular for maybe another week. So you might not have any idea what the hell I'm talking about if you're watching this video, wherever you are. Number 2, helps us understand the nature of our human society and the political problems that we all face right now and have done for a long, long time until we awaken philosophy. Number 2, which should be balloons. Yes. And number 3, which is confetti, yes, and balloons too, is right. So smallest is obviously the bear and man. The greater is human society as a whole, solving those problems. Which, come on, we've done enough of the playing out the implications of our pathologos. Let's pick up this game. Let's do Apollo, Aphrodite, and Hermes. And then finally, why? What's the whole purpose of this? Whether or not, we help people with their meme debates, whether or not we are able to save humanity from its inevitable collapse if it does not awaken philosophy. Our own self. Our own destiny. Now, I shouldn't dismiss that. I think it's worth saving humanity. Awakening it to what's in us already anyway. You have it, it's just a matter of turning your soul to it. And that's through what? The dialectic. So, good for us. And thank you for joining me. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you found that fun. I hope there was something from that you became puzzled about and you're wondering about, and you've got some great questions from your question sack. And I hope that helps you turn those questions into your own for your if sack. And I hope you use your ifs, you create your hypothesis using the dialectic, especially because Hermes will be happy with you. Hermes will get mad if you don't. No, he won't. He'll be encouraging. I'm sure he's a lovely man. God. Whoa, he's a god. Yeah, so help Hermes by making your if sack follow as close as you can to the dialectic. If you want, if you want to play, share it with us. Share your understanding, share your insights. Enjoy it, celebrate it together. That's what we're here for. And I hope you join me next time. Thank you so much.